I don't know if all of you have met Maxim, so
Yes.
let me quickly introduce him. He is a research scholar at the Kennan Institute at the Woodrow Wilson Center. Somebody knock on the door. Okay. And he is also a visiting scholar at Fletcher, and I believe you're also affiliated with George Washington University. He has been a human rights defender and attorney for more than 12 years. Of law practice in Russia, and he's defended refugees, asylum seekers, civil activists persecuted by the Russian authorities, and NGOs recognized as foreign agents. So we're delighted to have him talk a little bit about what is happening with the rule of law in Russia today, given the recent events. And Maxim, if you don't mind, perhaps we can keep it somewhat less formal and be able to ask questions at any time. Is that okay?
Oh,
Okay,
definitely.
so please proceed.
So thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here again and to return. So it's really nice to see the faces again. So so today I would like to bring up an issue of repression against the independent lawyers in Russia. And as you could see, it's the title is Independent Russian Lawyers in the Face of Repression, Exile, and Indifference of the Bar Corporation. Because unfortunately today, in nowadays Russia, the situation of independent lawyers is really tough, because they are between repressive state and indifference of their, like the bar corporation. And I will describe this situation in a moment. So and I would like to devote this the presentation to the problem of the increased repression of independent lawyers through the last years. And the reason, and one of the main reasons for discussing this topic, is the recent arrest of Alexei Navalny's lawyers in Russia, the most famous politician in Russia. Unfortunately, however, this criminal prosecution of Navalny's defenders is only like a tip of the iceberg. And the persecution of defense lawyers in Russia has been consistently developing and in many years, for many years, and has taken on a new scale against the backdrop of the war in Ukraine, obviously. And I would like today to give specific examples of such repressions, and I would like to express my own opinion why it is so today in Russia. So the most well-known cases of harassment and repression of lawyers can be conditionally divided, in my view, into four main groups. It's criminal case against lawyers of opposition politician Alexei Navalny, like the most famous recent case. Also repressions against lawyers of journalist Ivan Safronov. It's a quite important milestone of this repression process towards Russian independent lawyers, labeling independent lawyers as foreign agents, and also physical violence against independent lawyers. And it's important to understand that these examples are only the most vivid examples and do not include many other cases of violation of lawyers' rights related to pressure from law enforcement agencies, unreasonable search, and fabricated criminal cases unrelated to political circumstances and reasons. So about Alexei Navalny's lawyers' case. So in October of this year, 3 lawyers of the politician Alexei Navalny were arrested in Russia. They were accused of participating in a so-called extremist community, specifically the Anti-Corruption Foundation, so-called FBK, which Navalny founded in 2011 in Russia. Russian authorities liquidated this foundation in 2021 as an extremist organization. So if you have today in Russia some relations with this organization, it could be a ground for your persecution under the criminal code of Russian Federation. So Navalny's lawyers were accused of allegedly passing information and instructions from their client, who is in prison, to his associates at freedom, which helped them, according to the Russian authorities, continue the foundation's activities. And two of Navalny's lawyers managed to leave the country, Fedulov and Mikhailova. So, in my view, it's obvious that even having sentenced Alexei Navalny to 19 years in a special regime colony with the strictest conditions of detention in August 2023, the Russian authorities continue to see him and his fellows, his colleagues, who carry on their activities outside Russia as a great threat, especially in the face of so-called elections in 2024. In this regard, the criminal prosecution of Navalny's lawyers aims to completely isolate the opposition politician from the outside world and prevent him from continuing to put up an active defense through new legal representatives. Because the concept of extremist activity in Russian law is so vaguely defined that, in fact, any lawyer who refuses to be loyal to the investigative authorities and carries out his work honestly risks to going to jail like Sergunin, Liptsar, and Kobzev. Another one important and, in my view, quite a vivid example of repression is case of lawyers, Ivan Safronov's lawyers. Very briefly, in 2021, the lawyers of journalist Ivan Safronov, who was accused of treason by the Russian authorities and sentenced to 22 years in prison for allegedly cooperating with the Czech special services and passing them classified materials of the military nature, were persecuted. The case became extremely high profile and received global media coverage. Because of Safronov's vigorous defense and numerous comments to the press about the trial, Ivan Pavlov, principal lawyer of Safronov, was prosecuted for allegedly disclosing information about the investigation. He also became the first lawyer in Russia to be declared a foreign agent, along with almost all his team 2029. It's a kind of a community of lawyers founded by Ivan Pavlov. So, amid criminal prosecution, pressure from the authorities, surveillance, and the virtual impossibility to work, Pavlov was forced to leave the country. After that, the Federal Chamber of Lawyers suspended his lawyer's license. And his colleague, Evgeny Smirnov, was also later forced to leave the country for fear of criminal prosecution. Another Safronov's lawyer, Dmitry Talantov, was arrested in a trumped-up criminal case on the so-called public dissemination of knowingly false information about the use of the armed forces of the Russian Federation on the ground of political hatred from his side, so towards Russian military service. The accusation was his anti-war posts and comments on social networks, and he faces up to 10 years in prison right now. It's also quite important to mention the tendency of labeling independent lawyers as foreign agents. So the practice of labeling them as foreign agents is becoming more and more widespread. More and more often, this is a kind of a punishment of lawyers for publicly demonstrating their disloyalty to Putin's regime. Sometimes entire teams of lawyers receive this status. For example, together with Ivan Pavlov, his colleague, a member of the independent team of lawyers, Team 29, created by Pavlov, Valery Vetashkin, and another member of this team, Maxim Krupskiy, were labeled as foreign agents. Formally, Vetashkin and Alenichev were recognized as foreign agents for receiving fees from NGOs foreign agents and commenting to the media foreign agents. So foreign agents around us in Russia. It's a really disturbing situation. You can spit on the sidewalk, and maybe you could also found there like a foreign agent. I don't know. While other well-known lawyers also received the status of a foreign agent, Mikhail Binyash, who specialized in defending civil activists and publicly criticized the Russian authorities. Ilya Novikov, known for his participation in many high-profile political trials, defended, among others, Ukrainian citizens, went to Ukraine, and after the outbreak of the war, joined the territorial defense of Kiev. In Russia, Novikov was stripped of his lawyer status, his lawyer's license, in 2022, and also a criminal case of treason was opened against him. Galina Arapova, one of my friends, one of the most prominent media lawyers in Russia and head of the non-profit organization Center for the Protection of Media Rights, which was also included in the register of foreign agents a few years ago, also received the status of a foreign agent, and she was forced to leave Russia. Yes.
Can I ask a clarification question about how this foreign agent label is given to these lawyers? Is it for their activities as lawyers, or is it for something else?
Sometimes it's really hard to understand because, for example, in the case of Ivan Pavlov, when he commented something about the case of Ivan Safronov, or when he gave some comments to different media about different legal issues, and it was a kind of his critique of legal situation in Russia, and it could be a ground for labeling as a foreign agent. So it could be connected, it could be related to a legal activity, but in fact the real reason why it's, of course, it's a public activity. So all these lawyers are quite active in media space. So, and this is the real reason, this is the real ground of their labeling as foreign agents. It's just because, again, everyone could be a foreign agent according to the Russian legislation because of this quite vaguely formulated definition. So this is the case. This is the issue. Of course, this is kind of a revenge of Russian authorities because of this public activity of this experts and lawyers, legal experts, lawyers, attorneys, doesn't matter. And of course, this status creates a lot of boundaries, a lot of obstacles for work, because well, if you are a foreign agent, it's not the real mark for your potential clients, you know, because it's maybe if you are a foreign agent, as people could think, it's not a good sign for them, you know, because maybe some potential clients could think in this way: okay, my lawyer publicly labeled as foreign agent, and it could influence my own case in the eyes of the judge, for example, because he is a kind of an enemy of the state, a kind of an enemy, like public enemy, I don't know, enemy of the people, or even, I don't know, a spy or a traitor or something. And of course, in like during the trial, during this concrete case, it could be a problem for the faith, for the even sometimes even for the life of these people. So
do they have to say during the trial that they are a foreign agent?
Well, I think first of all, it's publicly like
it's known by everybody.
It's known by everybody, but it's, I would say that sometimes it's hard to understand if you should or not mention the status on, for example, your official papers. Just in case, in my trials, sometimes when I work with different NGOs labeled as foreign agents, we mention the status like with the big letters right on this papers to the court. So it's sometimes it looks crazy, but still it's like, I don't know, it's the application and then like a part of a list. It's a declaration that you are a foreign agent and your client is a foreign agent. So yeah, And this is real issue for them, because it's a kind of a black mark for them. Also, by the way, inside the legal community of attorneys, community of legal representatives in Russia. Also, of course, the issue of physical violence is a great issue for Russian lawyers right now and for many years. Because Russian lawyers for many years, they have been subjected to physical violence. And the most high-profile cases of attacks on lawyers tend to take place in Chechnya, obviously, again, like it's a kind of a example of the most, like, I would say, violent region for independent human rights activists and lawyers, and most dangerous region inside Russia. For example, in 2020, lawyer Marina Dubrovina and Novaya Gazeta journalist Elena Milashina were attacked in the city of Grozny. They were beaten right in the hotel lobby, and the attack was filmed. According to Dubrovina, the attack was related to the fact that she was defending the author of a critical video about Ramzan Kadyrov and his inner circle. In July this year, lawyer Alexander Nemov and again journalist Elena Milashina were beaten up in Chechnya. The attack was carried out by a group of armed men. Milashina's fingers were broken. She suffered a head injury. She was dosed with this green liquid, and her head was forcibly shaved. The reason for the attack was the participation of a lawyer and a journalist in the case of Zarema Musayeva, the mother of opposition activists Abubakar and Ibrahim Yilgulbayev, who was kidnapped and taken to Chechnya in 2022 and charged with violence against the government official and fraud. So she was kidnapped in Nizhny Novgorod by special Chechen policemen. So they kidnapped her in Nizhny Novgorod, and local police didn't do anything, in fact. So it's just, it wasn't their case, they stated. So, and yeah, so now she's in prison, and in fact, I think she already had been sentenced to several years in prison, I suppose. So in 2018, Mikhail Binyash, Krasnodar lawyer, was going to defend those detained at the protests against the increase in the retirement age on September 9, 2018. And he was stopped in the middle of the street by men in civilian clothes and forced into a car, and then beaten at the local police station. Later, in the hospital, Binyash was declared a lot of injuries and harm. And in connection, interesting thing that in connection with the beating, a criminal case was opened, against Mikhail himself for violence against two police officers, and he was found guilty. And it's just quite important to understand that it's not like, several different cases. It's a kind of a tendency. And very fearful, by the way. And the main goal of repression against independent lawyers, in my view, is to force political obedience and homogenize the public information space. Again, because all these examples of repression against those lawyers, it's, in my view, again, it's a kind of a revenge for their public activity, disloyalty to official Russian authorities, and quite honest work as a legal representatives, as a lawyers. So, as you can see, persecution and repression of lawyers are of different nature, but their main purpose, again, as I said, it's always to force political loyalty and the desire the state and near-state forces to suppress the active work of lawyers, and first of all, of course, in the public space. The arrest of Alexei Navalny's lawyers led to a proposal to go on strike this year, and Again, as you could see on this slide, it's due to systematic violations of lawyers' rights and inability to receive proper assistance from the Federal Chamber of Lawyers, so-called FPA, the main body representing and protecting the interests of lawyers in Russia. In October 2023, a group of independent lawyers posted a petition in defense of Russian lawyers, called for general strike, refusal by lawyers to perform their duties for several days. The petition was signed by about 200 lawyers, and by the way, the total number of lawyers in Russia is about 84,000. Yeah, so it's and the FPA called the petition demagogic noise, took no action to protect its colleagues. Unfortunately, the bodies of lawyers' so-called self-governance today in Russia take a passive position and try their best to compromise with the state. Moreover, today the FPA not only fails to help lawyers defend their interests in the face of the state, but also cooperates with the state authorities itself, supporting legislative initiatives that significantly make life more difficult for lawyers. As an example, it's one of my favorite examples of such kind of collaboration, is an example of a recent important amendment to the law on advocacy in Russia, put forward by the Ministry of Justice and supported by the FPA, is depriving status to lawyers who, without valid reasons, left Russia for permanent residence elsewhere or for a period of more than 1 year, including to unfriendly states, and continue their activities, including those aimed at undermining confidence in the institution of the legal profession. By the way, if we'll read through this text and dig deep, this amendment directly relates to Ivan Pavlov's case, because Ivan Pavlov's case is like when he was for the first time, I don't know how it is now, for the first years in exile. So he remained as a legal representative of several clients inside Russia. So he coordinated the activity of different lawyers on the ground, but still he presented himself as a lawyer, as a legal representative of those clients who were inside Russia. And it's his case, definitely. So it's a kind of permanent residence elsewhere outside Russia for a period of more than 1 year, including to unfriendly states and so on and so forth. So this is the idea of, again, it's a kind of a way to discipline independent lawyers to be more loyal to the Russian authorities. Because on the one hand, you could be beaten, as for example, Nemov or Binyash, or you could be repressed through the implication of foreign agent legislation towards you. Or on the other hand, you could, if you don't want to go to the jail, you can leave the country, but forget about your career as an independent lawyer. So it's a kind of like between, I don't know, between two fires. I don't know how to say it.
Where it says continue their activities, it's specifically referring to legal activities within Russia. Yes, so you can't be a Russian lawyer outside of Russia.
This is about it's about this situation. When you leave Russia, so you cannot be Russian lawyer. So it's like you have to be. It's quite again. It's a kind of a trap. It's kind of a legal trap, because if you want to go outside, okay, but you will not be a lawyer anymore. So just, I don't know, maybe.
Do you have a guess of how many lawyers have left Russia in the past year and a half?
Dozens, I think dozens, because a lot of my colleagues, a lot of friends of mine, people who I know very well personally, like in person, so they are out of Russia. They are in exile because of different kind of reasons, but of course, mostly because of potential threat of repression from Russian government. And it's not only, like attorneys with official status, because here most of these lawyers have special lawyer's license. And I'm not talking right now about just simple lawyers without this license, like human rights defenders, for example, from different NGOs and so on and so forth, because it's kind of like dozens of lawyers. They settled in Georgia, Kazakhstan, Lithuania, some of them in Latvia, some of them in France, in Germany. So it's just different regions where they are living now. So and it's a great threat for them. Yeah.
So depriving status, so supported by the FPA is depriving status. What does that mean? I think I'm trying to figure out if they
License.
licensed, but if these lawyers are living abroad, do they care about a valid Russian law license?
Well, it's again, if you, for example, if you have this license, so it's a kind of a mark, a kind of a sign of your qualification for people, like for potential clients. Because if you just, for example, if you just a regular lawyer without a license, you cannot work on criminal cases, for example. And if you have this license, so you can work. Of course, if you live abroad, it's again, it doesn't matter for you, but for your potential clients, it matters because it's a sign of you as a kind of a profi in this field, like for example, a criminal case or something. And moreover, it's quite interesting that today already in Russian law on advocacy exist several norms according which you cannot work as a lawyer even without a license if you were deprived your status. So it's a kind of a additional penalty for you. So it's a kind of like a ban of your legal activity at all. If they deprived your status, so it could be on several reasons and on several grounds. It could be for you direct ban of your legal activity, further legal activity as legal representative. Okay, you could do it like I don't know how to say it, like in a shadow, So you can do it like unofficially, but officially you can't. So this is the case. And yeah, so it's a kind of we have in Russian language this words like a volчий билет, a wolf ticket, a kind of a ban on your activity. But I would say that it's not a unique case for Russia. It's not unique. Definitely, it's not a unique case for Russian history. And today, Russia is moving into the arms of the Soviet past, obviously, and the situation will only get worse, especially since there is historical experience for this. For example, during the Soviet era, lawyers who worked on political cases were subjected to systematic repressions. Interesting statistics have been collected by the independent project Defenders, whom no one protected, about the persecution of lawyers in Soviet times. It even came to the point that they were forbidden to demand the acquittal of their client. And only specially selected lawyers who had proven their political loyalty were allowed to participate in political cases. And here you could see some statistics. So it's between 1917 and 1953, about 400 lawyers practicing in Moscow and Moscow region were subjected to repressions. And more than half of them were shot or died in prison before being sentenced. The rest were sentenced to various punishments and only a few were released. And it's quite important to understand again, like this heritage of KGB practices, because I could see right now quite similar practices towards Russian lawyers right now in nowadays Russia. And again, a similarity between these practices and practices of the Soviet KGB towards independent lawyers. Independent lawyers faced constant surveillance by the KGB, their home phones were tapped, and they were induced to immigrate under threat of criminal prosecution and disbarment, again, depriving their status, their license. One of the most famous such cases was that of the well-known lawyer Dina Kaminskaya. I really love her. I really love her book, how to say it, Lawyer's Tales or something like that. Who, under the influence of KGB threats, was forced to immigrate with her husband to the United States in 1977 after devoting 37 years to her profession. A wonderful expert, just amazing master of law. And this is her quote. It was given to read a letter signed by the Moscow prosecutor. The letter raised the question of my expulsion from the collegium. So it's a kind of like a official community of lawyers. It mentioned the search, the fact that my husband was the author of an anti-Soviet manuscript, and of course, the fact that I had met with foreign correspondents whom the Soviet press called CIA agents. Sounds quite familiar right now. I would say that this quote from her book, like Notes of a Lawyer, is very vivid. And in fact, it's about her communication with her colleagues from the Presidium of the Moscow Bar Association and her inclination to immigrate. And it feels like it's written not about 1977, but about 2023 right now. So to conclude, it's my vision of very close future. Destruction of the independent legal profession is obviously a direct consequence of the general erosion of the rule of law in Russia, which has been occurring consistently for many years and has been greatly intensified amidst the war against Ukraine. And there is no doubt that the persecution of independent lawyers will take on larger and larger proportions and increasingly resemble the worst Soviet repressive practices. Again, especially amidst the further so-called elections in 2024. The advocates' self-governing bodies, and primarily the FPA, will continue to compromise with the state authorities and demand political loyalty from lawyers under the threat of their expulsion from the profession. Very briefly, I think this is like the most potential future for independent legal profession inside Russia right now, unfortunately. But I don't see any alternatives to this tendency right now, because of course a lot of independent lawyers who are working on these political cases, they will try to do something, they will try to protect people, but they eventually become aims of these repressions like themselves, like lawyers of Alexei Navalny, for example. And it's again, it's quite understandable tendency from the point of view of current conditions of Russian state and Russian society. And moreover, I think that the most part of colleagues of these independent lawyers will be very quiet, very silent, because they know the rules. They know the rules that you have, in fact, just in simple words, you have to shut up your mouth, and that's it. So you could work on common civic cases, even criminal cases, or you even could work on political cases, but without your public activity, without your honest work and real protection of this people, of your clients, and of course without like public campaigns, like it was in the case of Ivan Safronov, for example. when Safronov's lawyers they just started this campaign in media and so on and so forth. Because in Russia, in these conditions, when you want to bring something positive to your client, you have to raise this wave of public attention. And that's why, for example, journalists are so important persons, and independent journalism activities is quite important help for defense and for independent lawyers. And that's why Russian authorities like see these two types of independent activity as a great threat for like the status quo, because they want to keep the status quo for themselves. Russian authorities, they quite interested in that. And it's ridiculous that even now, amidst the war in Ukraine, amidst different criminal cases against oppositioners and so on, Russian authorities and Russian state still wants to keep this control and keep the status quo. And to some extent, maybe it's strange to say about some threat for this regime, but it's a kind of like I think it's a kind of a pattern. It's a kind of like a vision of your status as a hegemon, I don't know, like a sovereign. So you have a lot of power in your hands, and you have to use this power towards your enemies, even if they cannot do something bad for you, like mosquito or something, because, well, maybe they could reach some, I don't know, some goals, some results in this field. Maybe some people will start thinking in other way, and that's why Russian authorities and Russian state, Putin's regime, they just want to suppress any potential grassroots movements, any potential threat, even if it's like a minimum threat, like it doesn't matter, because they want to show that they can repress, that they can push these independent lawyers and dissenters outside the country. And it's quite interesting, by the way, that I have read recently a book of Alexander Podrobinik. It's one of the Soviet dissidents, and like the title of the book, Dissidents. And it was written there that he received in 70s, at the end of 70s, a kind of like an offer from KGB guys that he and his entire family, they should leave the country. They should go outside to Israel or somewhere else. And when they said that they don't want, but also they even don't have enough money for that. So KGB guys told them, it's not a problem. We will give you money. We will buy you tickets. We will like put you on the plane, and just we want to get rid of you. And that's it. So it's like a kind of compromise or something like that. So this is the case.
When you say compromise with state authorities, I understand that in the Soviet era, it was the KGB largely coordinating this repressive apparatus. Do you think it's the security services today, or is it more complex?
I think it's more complex, but I think in some cases, like for example, Ivan Pavlov's case, it's like the interest of secret services, the FSB, I think was quite well shown to the public, and it's the main reason of his like of the repression towards him. But I think it depends on situation. But if for example, we are talking about such cases like case of Alexei Navalny, or I don't know, Ivan Safronov case or other political prisoners, like for example Vladimir Karamurza, because his lawyer Vadim Prokhorov also I think he also left the country because of this potential threats of repression and everything like that. When we are talking about, for example, Chechen cases in Chechnya region, I don't think that it's like a hand or arm of FSB or something. It's regional authorities. It's like some interest of Kadyrov's inner circle or Kadyrov himself, I don't know. And sometimes, like for example, in the case of one lawyer of not committee but team against torture, it is happening these days, like right now. He was kidnapped by the family in Chechnya, by the family of one girl who was suffering from domestic violence, and he helped her to leave the region. And then he was kidnapped by her family, and her family gave him 1 week for her to come back, and they just publicly told him that if she will not come, we kill you and your entire family. So, and this is like the situation which is happening right now, and nobody knows where exactly he is, and I just don't remember exactly his surname, but I can find it. It
But
doesn't.
I think that points out a very interesting dichotomy still, that we're not yet at the point in all of Russia that there is a complete disregard for rule of law, like in Chechnya, where I think there's rule by force.
Of course, you always can do more.
Well,
It's
and
like
so I guess the question is, who is driving the tightening of the screws? Is it, just Putin, or has he lost control of this process?
I don't think that he lost control. I think that they try to, how to say it, to recognize different actors inside his inner circle, or in, I don't know, in some secret services, or just so-called in the circle of so-called Siloviki, let's say. They could try to recognize his will, his view of the situation, and they just try to feel this current situation, like current red flags or red lines. And when they understand that they could, for example, kidnap someone, and without any certain, like any negative results or consequences for them, why not? In my view, for example, like it's one of the main vivid signals that the rule of law is nothing. It's like innocence of so-called Prigozhin's mutiny this summer. Like it's unbelievable.
Yeah, but the point is that certain instances of lawlessness create the perception that now lawlessness is allowed.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. This is the point. So it's again, it's I think that it's not really necessary in each case to have a kind of direct command or something from Putin or someone else. They just understand that, okay, so we just try to do that. Like in case, for example, of this lawyer Nemov and Milashna. Let's see. I don't think that they will find someone. I don't think that they will open a real criminal case against someone, because it's impossible to persecute these bastards who treated this lawyer and journalist. But they just try. They try. Let's see what we'll do next. And I think that they feel they have this sense of the current moment. They understand that they can do that. It's just step by step. It's not like that's why it's such type of situation with Navalny's lawyers, for example. If you right now, not several years ago, it wasn't impossible to like even think that 5 lawyers at the moment could be just put in jail, and that's it. So I think this is the point. I think it's a kind of like a mix of again, it's about complexity of situation. But I think that Putin and his inner circle, they just formulate some, I would say, maybe direction, or again, they create some sense of the movement. And well, I think that if those people who act so violently and who open criminal cases against lawyers, who repress them, and so on and so forth, I think that if they could explain their activity and what are they doing in terms of, again, loyalty and authoritarian interests of regime, so they will be safe. And
Arik, do I have time? Do we have time for questions? Or
yeah.
yes, I have actually a few questions.
Okay.
Probably first quick question. As we know, there is a ongoing trend of increasing trend of abusing psychiatry as a tool of repression. When authorities put dissidents instead of jail, they
Yeah.
put them in psychiatric facilities.
Yeah.
Do you know any cases where authorities put lawyers, attorneys in psychiatric facilities? That's my first question. Second question, regarding that attorney strike that's supposed to happen on October 25th through October 28th. Did it happen? What was the outcome? Do you know the? I'm wondering. And the third question, the last question. Take into consideration all risks that attorneys now, independent attorneys now facing, especially those who defending, or are involved in political cases. What would be the best strategy for them to leave Russia? Or should they leave Russia? Or what would, let's say, if some attorney would call you and ask your advice, what would you say? Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot for all of your questions. So, like, first question, I'm not sure. I don't think that there are some examples of using this how to say it, psychiatry instruments of this institutions against lawyers. I'm not sure. I know that this tendency was quite useful for Soviet times, and in 70s and 60s they used this kind of repression towards dissidents, but I don't know any cases. I'm not familiar with any cases with this such type of repression right now inside Russia against lawyers. But it's just maybe the lack of information on my side. But I don't think so. I think that no. And the second question about strike. I don't think that there were some real outcomes. I saw some posts on social media from some of my colleagues, and I saw again some statements, but I don't think that right now um, there could be some outcomes of such strike, because if you want a real strike, so you have to engage in this strike as much lawyers as possible. And I provided this numbers that only 200 people signed this petition, and that's it from 84,000. So it's I don't think that we could say that we could really see some, like, I would say, positive results or something. But I think it's quite important as a historic example, because it's my memory. I think it's just the first lawyers strike in nowadays Russia, or at least a kind of like a petition or a statement of such type of strike. So I think it's quite important precedent. And even the reaction of legal community, also quite I would say vivid example of the current situation with the independent legal profession, independent legal activity. As about your last question with what could I advise? It's really hard to advise something for other colleagues, because you have to take into account your own conditions, your own situation. You have or you don't have your relatives, for example, inside Russia. Do you have any other alternative possibilities of your work, of your income, and everything like that? Can you get some documents abroad or not? So it's quite hard to give some advices to these lawyers and to these colleagues. But I think that again, each person in this situation have to decide by him or herself what to do, because it's just, again, it's your own responsibility, it's your own sense of your I don't know, your work, your passion, your goals again. So it's I don't know. It's really, for me, it's really impossible to give some advices in this sense. So I think that that if you leave Russia, especially after these amendments, which I think they will sign. I mean, these amendments to the law on advocacy. This declaration of license in case of leaving the country and everything like that, you have to, like, each person have to be ready to start right from the zero their own life. So just in some academia maybe, or in other sphere of work, I don't know. So, but it should be quite understandable for each person that you will be banned from your real official work in Russia as a lawyer. So,
Well, and Maxim, I think you understand this firsthand, having been a
Yes.
lawyer in Russia, and now
of
you're
course.
trying to create a new
Definitely.
career for yourself in
Exactly.
academia. I guess I have a somewhat different moral question for you, which is, if you were one of those 84,000 lawyers, would you take part in the strike? And what are the kinds of disincentives from doing so?
Well, first of all, I signed this petition, and I was one of these lawyers who signed this,
Right.
and who.
But you're outside the country.
Yeah, yes, I understand that, but it's just you for like these days, several days. So you shouldn't participate your trials, your cases, and so on. So I think that you should to discuss it with your clients, and to explain for them why are you doing this stuff. And of course it depends on like your current your current affairs with your uh, colleagues, with your clients, and so on. So I think it's a kind of like, it's a kind of a statement of your own position. So this is the main idea of the strike. But again, we could see the atomization, not only the Russian society like as a whole, but even atomization of community of lawyers, especially in the face of the official statement of Federal Chamber of Lawyers. Like this is again quite like bold example of bold evidence of the official position of this of legal authorities. I mean, like this so-called self-governing bodies of attorneys. They really think that it's a kind of hegemonic noise. That's it. So it's just independent lawyers in this case are quite independent.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have two questions.
Mhm.
One, are there any recent instances of successes in terms of defending activists when you're fighting against the state? Or is it mostly a case of, it's mostly a formality and you're fighting a lost cause? That's one. Second, when you say independent legal profession, you mean lawyers working on human rights issues or representing opposition leaders, or does the repression is broad-based and come into the picture when you challenge the state in any way?
So independent lawyers, in my understanding, is like the activity of independent lawyers, activity who first of all work in the field of human rights. So this is like the main definition in my view, and also those even in regular common cases who don't want to have any compromises with official authorities. So independent lawyers, even if it's like too broad definition, very simple, in very simple words, lawyers who are working quite honest. That's why they are independent from the state. So they don't use their license or their legal status as an instrument to receive some benefits from this like corruption procedures with the official bodies or something like that. They don't want to be a kind of like, I don't know, how to say it, people who just give money to police or the judge or something.
So I think it might be better to say, rather than independent lawyers, something like uncorrupted lawyers.
It's again, it's like the broad definition of corruption because, but okay, yes, uncorrupted lawyers, yeah, it's also could be a term. But anyway, so this is like the main idea that's like the lawyers with the value of their own profession. So and about results, well, you could reach some good results, but it's quite a rare situation. And even if you reach them, the next instance, like the judicial instance, will break your positive decision, like it was, for example, in one of my cases, the first case in Russia for the last 10 years, with this foreign agents cases, foreign agents trials. When I won the case in appeal of one of NGOs, which protected is protecting right now. So HIV positive people and given kind of social assistance and everything like that. So we got this positive decision. We spent, I think, 4 trials, 3 or 4 hours each, and then we got this 26 pages judgment, and it was brilliant. But next instance, so-called cassation instance, dismiss this judgment in 7 or 10 minutes.
So Stas just wrote a comment about the acquittal rate. Stas, do you want to say anything about that?
No, this is just for statistics that it's 1/3% acquittal rate in Russia, according
Yes.
to U.S. State Department. So
Yes.
basically, chances are zero to
Yeah,
be.
in criminal, yes, criminal case, yes, definitely, I understand. Well, you can do something in administrative cases, but again, it's quite rare. But anyway, yes, I agree, of course, I agree with Stas. It's, yeah, unfortunately, it's almost impossible, especially in the face of political motivated cases.
Did you have another question?
Yeah, actually now, I mean, you answered my second
Okay.
one as well about the instances of successes. Yeah, I have one more, which is
Yeah.
about, for example, hypothetically, there is some economic issue in a local, in a city, not Moscow, but any smaller city. And the residents are suing the state and saying that, oh, just something is wrong has happened. A state company is involved. We need justice. And there are protests, local protests. I'm just giving a hypothetical.
Okay.
So there are local protests. Does the state look at this and say this could be a source of instability in future? We need to do something about it. Will justice happen in those specific cases so that it doesn't become broad-based and become a mass movement and then try and nip in the bud? Or you think violence still is the preferred option for the state? And say,
There
let's.
have been some local environmental protests that have been quite successful. I'm thinking about the
Some-
Stau case, for example.
Sometimes, but it depends on situation and regions. Because if you have like, I don't know, real loyal population there and loyal bureaucrats, so, and you face, I don't know, some protests, like a small group of people, and so for you, it's easier to beat them, to put them in jail, or like to repress them. But as Arik said, I know these cases in some regions with, again, some special circumstances, you could reach positive results, like Far East, for example, with environmental cases. Because it's quite interesting, when I had some experience of work with environmental NGOs there, they told me that even their bureaucrats, like on the ground, they also want to do something good for their environment, because it's a kind of, like a sense of your, how to say it, of your local ties to these traditions, to this ground, to this, like, it's a kind of like the small micro world, I don't know, something like a local interests, local traditions, and local sense of your independence, I would say also. Like, for example, I think Pavel will agree with me, like in Ural region, it's also like the independent, to some extent independent region when like people think about themselves. So, and if local people understand that it's quite important for them to keep like good environment, for example, and when they see some attempts, especially from outside, for example, from Moscow or from some federal state companies or business or something, to harm their environment and to harm their interests. So of course they're not really happy about that, and then sometimes it could be a kind of a collaboration between local grassroots movements, local bureaucracy, NGOs, and some even like how to say it, famous persons in the media. So it's a kind of like a mix of instruments, but again, the very foundation of potential result, it's a sense of dignity. It's a sense of people's dignity. If they have this sense of dignity, even like local, in terms of local interest or something, so you could reach some results. You could have some protection in maybe federal agencies or something. So it's kind of like you. That's why I'm talking about, like a lot of my colleagues, that this is the key feature of democracy, the key need of democracy, to have these ties on the ground. That's why Russian authorities try to like, how to say, disintegrate Russian society, try to atomize Russian society, and also try to repress some initiatives on a local level, because it's again, we could like witness some positive cases, not too much, but anyway, it could be a precedent. And yeah.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but this repressions against lawyers is not only repressions against lawyers themselves, but it is also repressions against people who will be accused in political cases. And you are right that it will be especially painful in regions. Why? Because in Moscow case, some community, lawyer community, and even if you are in opposition, in different sides of barricades, you can communicate. What is going on in Perm, for instance? I personally know 3 lawyers. One of them, it is a mother of my classmate, and she was a criminal lawyer, and she participated in very tough criminal cases in 1990s related with organized crime, and so on and so on. And I remember it was 2020, she said, Pavel, if there will be some troubles with you, I will help you. She realized my area of research, but in 2022, in spring, she nullified her license and she retired. Second example, wife of my former colleague at Perm University. Also, she was a lawyer mostly for administrative cases, but she defended political activists in Perm. Spring 2022, she and her husband, they repatriated to Israel. They started this process in 2020, soon after the referendum on constitutional amendments. But this process completed just in 2022. They repatriated. And the third case, also criminal lawyer. The problem is that he is really loyal to the government because of what? Because his career depended on his mother, and his mother works in prosecutor office for many years. And you know, it's like young Medvedchuk. You remember, Medvedchuk was a KGB lawyer who defended political activists in Ukraine, and after that he became an oligarch. So 3 different cases, and people who had the professional dignity, they either retired or immigrated, and only lawyers with 156% of loyalty remain in profession.
Yeah, they totally. It's a great challenge, especially. I agree with that, especially in regions, because of the lack of potential clients, and again, it's quite hard to protect your own reputation, for example, and to find people who will not be afraid of you as a, I don't know, again, foreign agent or whatever. So yeah, it's a great challenge. That's why I cannot say any advices and give any advices, because it's quite personal decision and personal situation.
But the closer we get to the Soviet system, it's not the law, it's now a kind of role play of the law. And then,
Definitely.
you know, you have a question, well, what is this all for if it's completely a sham?
Yes, yes, yes. But sometimes, for example, like for lawyers, even in Soviet times, who defended dissidents, there was a kind of a place and the status with which you could speak freely. You could express your own views, express your own position, and it's like it was also a kind of a joke that you could be free in Soviet Union only in the like on the trial.
That's
when you're-
very interesting. And even in Russia today,
Yeah.
it seems that these speeches that Navalny is giving in
Exactly.
court are another example of that coming back.
Yes, exactly, of course. Yes. So,
Yeah, you mentioned about, you know, a lot of lawyers are in exile, they leave the country. Are there any organization outside Russia who are providing any help initially when they move out? Are there any support system from dissidents who had?
Seems like maybe a good question for Stas.
For Stas, I think. I also think about that.
Stas, do you want to say something about support for exiled Russian lawyers?
Well, there are many of diaspora organizations right now, not only for lawyers, but in general for those who flee in Russia, who flee in the repression and draft campaign, mobilization campaign. It depends on the location. In Europe, there are more. There are better infrastructure and logistics for those Russians in terms of humanitarian protection and in terms of financial support and so on and so forth. And plus there are there are many organizations, that diaspora organizations, who who provide some kind of assistance, provide information, resources, and I don't know, some kind of it's a on the organization basis, kind of. So it depends on the location, I would say. If I
And also there are
and again, it's about the network and community. For example, if you are an attorney, if you were an attorney in Russia, and then you want to pursue this legal career in the United States or in Europe, so you basically can connect to your colleagues who are also in exile, or recently or a few years ago moved to or immigrated from Russia to particular country, and ask their advice how to build a legal career in that particular country, to get education, license, whatever.
Thank you, Stas.
I have nothing to add.
Any final questions?
Maxim, do you think the detention of Navalny lawyers was foreseen somehow? Because reading the news and talking to former colleagues, it seemed like a shock overall for everybody who witnessed that and who knew the lawyers personally.
They were shocked themselves.
So I was curious, like, about like how you perceived it, and whether you think there were any hints before that happened, or any signs that it might have happened,
think
that
so.
they just didn't listen to it carefully.
Yes, I think so. I think that again, in my view, I see it in a quite, I would say, Foucauldian paradigm, you know, like of the control of society. So I think that it's kind of like a measure of disciplining this society and lawyers and potential Navalny's lawyers also. So their goal not to put someone in jail, not to sentence someone during the trial or something. Their goal just to like again to monopolize the information public space, and that's it. So I don't know exactly, but I think of course there were some signs from official authorities which they gave to I don't know, to the lawyers or to Alexei Navalny himself. I don't know. And I think that, well, I think that I mean, lawyers, they just didn't think that it's possible to put all of them in jail on such, in fact, such ridiculous grounds. So it's again, it's that's why they were so shocked because of this all of this situation. So I think again, it's just my I don't know, my assumption that it's maybe they didn't recognize such signs as a real threat. Maybe they thought about that as about like a, you know, like a leverage of I don't know, some uh, censorship or something. I don't know. So it's just and of course when you work as a lawyer, it's it's quite understandable that they don't want, if they honest lawyers, they don't want to have such type of compromises because it's interference in their own activity, in their own legal activity. So it's a matter of again it's a matter of dignity, legal dignity, lawyer's dignity, I don't know, whatever. So I think that it's also like for them quite was and is quite important to stay with this sense of dignity, and the interference when someone, especially some official services, official authorities, dictate you how you should protect your client, how you should work. It's a kind of blow inside, you know. It's totally understandable for me. So I think that for them, they just decided that well, maybe it's not the real threat, and maybe like Russian authorities will not go so how to say so far, I don't know, like with this measures.
And as a follow-up, they were detained until December 13th for now. Do you think that there is like little chance that
No.
they might have threatened them that way?
Mhm.
Or they're gonna hold them for like 6 years?
They will close them.
real?
Well, I think that they will keep them in jail until they decide to release them. So it's my silly answer to this question, but that's it, you know. So it's just
As long as they want.
exactly, as long as they want. That's it. So because but I don't think that they will like give them freedom, that they will free them before 2024. I don't think that I don't think that it worked like that. Maybe I'm wrong. I want to be wrong, by the way, but I'm not sure.
May
Oh, yes, go ahead, Stas.
Yeah, so I
One
want to
final thought.
I want to refer to book and other works of Sergei Guriev and Daniel Traceman from UCLA.
Spin dictators.
Spin dictators, and they previously wrote quite intensely on the nature of political repression in the modern autocracies. So one of the main ideas is that modern autocracy, the repressive mechanism has shifted from persecution of the whole particular social group, like what we saw during the Stalin era, when Stalin repressed like thousands or millions of people, or ethnic groups, send them to Siberia or Central Asia. So now that 20th century repressive mechanism has been changed, and now the modern autocracies, they are persecuted. They're persecuting random kind of random individuals to create atmosphere of fear and prevent further descent. So the same, I believe that the same applies for a legal profession in Russia. Basically, authorities send a signal to other attorneys, Russian attorneys, and as Pavel mentioned, ordinary citizens. Don't participate in protests because no one will defend you. Don't defend anyone who participating in the protests, or don't be involved in politically motivated cases because you might get consequences of such defense. So that's my intake.
I agree with that. I agree with that, of course.
That's a very helpful insight. And Maxim, I think you had a lot of foresight into where the Russian legal system was going. I believe you expressed your interest to me in coming to Fletcher in September of 2022, perhaps even earlier. And
Yes.
at the time, the partial
Earlier.
mobilization.
It's earlier. It's
Must have been even earlier. The partial mobilization had not been declared, and you said that it will be very interesting to track what happens with Russia's foreign agents law and with the degradation of the rule of law. And I think even in the past year, we've seen tremendous
Of
changes.
course.
So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good.
Thank you.